Abi, when you said that you were going to start printing on glass, how was that received? Did you get any criticism? How did you keep going?
So the question was, how did other people react when I first pitched Fracture to them? And not good, unequivocally not good. And I really think it was a matter of the inexperience that I had of pitching a business and the ability to pitch convincingly your idea, your vision, your passion is something that takes time to refine. But of course, my first sounding boards were my parents. To be perfectly honest, to this day, I'm not sure my mother quite knows what I do on a daily basis. But she's proud and happy nonetheless. She still loves me. But the first person I pitched to was my father and actually my co-founder, Alex. And in order to get them to really believe what I had cooked up, or what we were cooking up at the time, it took time. It took momentum. The thing that helped from the very beginning is that we had a prototype from almost the first moment we started. Nothing convinces someone of your business, of your idea, when it's more than an idea. So we literally had a piece of glass that we had printed on a jerry-rigged printer from Office Max. Thanks to Alex. He's the Willy Wonka of my time. He's my MacGyver. And he jerry-rigged a printer, printed on glass, and that was the prototype I carried around to any party I needed to convince. Because when my words just didn't cut it, that visual really took it to the next level. And to this day, we're still trying to copy some of those vibrant colors and the things we found initially. But criticism is part of the game. It's something you're met with on a daily basis, even to this moment. But the more tangible, hands-on progress you can show, the better it'll be for you.
Great, thank you. So, Josh, tell us about how your business evolved. Was the first idea that you had what we see today in GrooveShark?
Far from it. So the question was, how has the business evolved over time, and was it the same back then that it is now? Absolutely not. The business has changed so much over the years, and I think it's important for every business to always remain ever-changing. I think it's a lot easier for an entrepreneur early on in the company creation process to lead the company astray by being too fixed to a particular concept rather than by changing things all the time. Change is good. And the earlier you are in your company's history, the easier it is to pivot, the easier it is to not be too attached to your initial idea. So for us, a lot of the magic was in realizing the difference between our idea of the mission and our idea of the product. So we had this mission from day one of competing with music piracy by creating something better. That was the reason why I partnered with Sam, the GrooveShark CEO. That was the reason why all of the people who were starting to get involved were kind of bought into it. And that's never wavered since then. But the initial product, the initial concept, as far as how we were going to pull that off, was very different from GrooveShark today. It used to be centered around music downloading. That was before we realized that streaming was kind of the next paradigm shift. So I think it's important to be flexible in a lot of things, but it's also important to realize that changing your core mission isn't always necessary. A lot of the time that you could still get to that mission through a different route.
And how did you realize that you needed to make a change? How did you realize that streaming was...
We realized very slowly. It took us about 2 years. So we founded the company in March of 2006, and it wasn't until April 15th, 2008, it's actually a very special date in our company's history, that we finally kind of pivoted and moved directions in a way that was really beneficial to us. So it took us a while to realize that, I think partially because we were new. So we were very attached to our initial idea. It was our baby. We'd all created it together. We didn't want to let it go. And then also, there weren't enough mounting pressures until it got to the point where we were literally out of cash. We completely ran out of money. We went back to our investors. They gave us a little bit more. We ran out again. And they said, this is it. You guys don't have enough users. You don't have any revenue. You have to come up with something that actually works. And that ended up being the best thing for us. I mean, they kind of held a gun to our head, metaphorically speaking. But we needed that. It was a push. And it helped us to realize that the product just was not good enough. So it was a tough pill to swallow, but we actually locked our core team in a room, locked the door and everything, and said we weren't leaving until we had a good plan. And the plan was that we would throw out everything we'd spent 2 years building and build something new from scratch. So it ended up being good, but it took a lot of pressure to kind of make us realize that we were kind of not going in a good direction. If I was to go back now and look at things differently, I would have kept a closer eye on the data. It's really easy if you're looking at a zoomed out graph of your traffic over time and it's pretty much a flat line. That should have been assigned to us back then. And then other than that, listening to your customers, listening to your users, and listening to any peers or advisors that you have. That's always invaluable.
Okay. I'm gonna stay with you for just one last question that will transition into questions about perseverance and vision. So, knowing that you've been sued by major companies and have won, what's that like, and how do you keep going? I imagine there's been days when you've thought maybe you should not do stuff. Quit.
That's a good question. So in the beginning, very intimidating. The first time we dealt with a lawsuit, I mean, we were really young. We are still relatively young, but back then we were much younger, and we really didn't know how to handle it. We're lucky enough that we have a lot of advisors who are much more experienced than we are, who've been in the music business for quite a while, experienced people on the legal side too. So it was very tough. It was very shaking to the company, but we dealt with it eventually as you would deal with any other crisis as a business. And personally, the things that I like are the crises that involve some kind of internal control, where we know that at the very least, if we're all kind of marching forward in the same direction, we all have a vision aligned that it's going to take us to a good place. And most crises will fall into that category. So for us, the first time we got hit with something like that, it was difficult because it seemed very different. Now we've realized it's a part of doing business. It's an unfortunate part of doing business, but we're by no means the only company that's getting sued, especially in the music space, or especially in the tech space. I mean, all the headlines of Apple and Amazon and Samsung and Google, everybody's always suing each other. So thankfully, at least we're more on the defensive side of it. I'm glad that we're not yet at the stage in the game where we're going out and litigating everybody as an aggressive tactic, but. Most of our business is still about focusing on the core value, about trying to build something good for our users and for artists and things like that. So things outside of that, they're a distraction more than anything.